Welcome to the ThunderCast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. You can follow us on Twitter at ThunderCast_pod. Links to all of our social media outlets are in the description to every single episode, no matter where you are listening and or watching the ThunderCast. We got us a instant classic recap, I guess. James Madison and the Herd, man, that one was something, wasn't it?
Sure was.
A lot on the line in that one. Obviously, Marshall wins the game. They go to represent the Sun Belt East Division in the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. So Marshall had to take care of their business, especially we come to find out kind of end of our game. Georgia Southern won and beat Appalachian State. So Marshall had to win to go to the conference championship game. And man, what a great game that was at the end. I don't know that, you could say from beginning to end it was very great, but boy, oh boy, the result was awesome.
Yeah.
So
it was a great game to be there. I went and everything, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but brought up a lot of big comeback memories.
Yeah, sure did. It's maybe the conversation will steer that way. But hey, I know we've got some other things, like soccer's still going on. The basketball teams are still doing their thing. So, let's get into this thing and give me a quick word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
Okay, I know we've got some things because there were some late breaking. I'm glad we waited an extra day because, man, some really awesome news came along. I bet it maybe it altered some things.
Well, I can say that almost everything was today is what came from this. So everything that was going to be a thing, it might have been like Mrs. Lippy drives a green car, but not now.
Here's the deal, right? I have been pretty quiet lately on the 5 things. We were just, streamlining the shows. We're at the end of football season, right? Because we've got one recap this week. We've got a game to preview, and then we've got one more recap before we get into bowls. So this is going to be very football centric for the next couple of episodes. And I'm going to discuss with you these things and just as they come along. So we might as well get into it. Give me at least 5 things every Herd fan needs to know this week.
Well, here are 6 things every Herd fan needs to know this week. As always, brought to you by IgniteLink, the Tri-State's premier IT management team. Number 1, the Sun Belt Football Awards are out, just came out today, and Mike Green has been named the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year, not Defensive Player of the Year, Player of the Year.
That is awesome. I saw a tweet, I think it was Luke, that said it's only the 3rd time a defensive player has been named Player of the Year.
Yeah, so I looked those up too. And one guy won it back-to-back in 16 and 17 for Arkansas State. But, the reason I went to look them up is we were having a little bit of discussion online. And I had said, well, the Sun Belt just generally does not do that. I remember the first year here, so-and-so won the Player of the Year, and then another quarterback won the Offensive Player of the Year. So that just, to me, was like, that's the way that they do it here. And I went and looked it up, and that's not true. Before, they had given double duty. Someone could be Defensive and Player of the Year or Offensive and Player of the Year, but they haven't done it since 2014. It was like 2013 or 2014 was the last time. That predates Commissioner Gill and the current administration. It's a totally different league now. So I'm just kind of thinking that's the way that they did it. And that's probably the way they'll do it moving forward. And that's why I looked that up, and I did see what Luke had put out earlier before he tweeted it about the different players that were defensive players that actually won Player of the Year.
Well, let's rewind really quick because I want to go back to the summer and when we were doing position group breakdowns and we were asked to be on some shows going into the preseason, and it was a common theme. Guys, who are you most excited to see from this herd team? Not
or
just
breakout.
this herd yeah, who's going to be the guy? And unequivocally, we were both like, it's Mike Green. It's going to be Mike Green. And a historic season, to say the least, one of the all-time greatest seasons that we've witnessed from a herd defensive lineman. This is not surprising. It was. I tell you what, when I was going through the timeline, I saw them out of order, and I saw that he did not win Defensive Player of the Year, and I was like, bullshit. That's what I thought. And then I saw that he had actually had one Player of the Year, and I thought, okay, that takes the sting down a little bit. But I'm not a fan of this sharing the wealth thing, man. And nothing against the dude from Georgia Southern. Nothing against him. But I don't fathom how you can be the overall player of the year, but not the player of the year on your side of the football.
Yeah.
I don't dig this spread the wealth thing. Yeah. I don't like that. Like I know there are great players, but what you're doing is robbing the guy who really did the job. And that, I'm not saying that just because it's our guy this year. It's like every year, right? But I could understand how, like, say, I don't know, like if the Conference USA, remember they used to have like Player of the Year and then MVP or something like that. It was different things, so it was slightly different. I don't get that, man. I mean, if you're the best player, then you're the best defensive player.
I agree. And I thought it was weird when we came into the league and the quarterbacks that year did that, and then the very next year it was the same thing. Not with necessarily quarterbacks. Last year, I think it was Jordan McLeod and Kamani Vidal or whatever. But I don't know that there is any... Not like the idiot you were talking to earlier on Twitter, but any reasonable Southern fan. I don't think there's any reasonable Southern fan that would put the two of those players up to each other and say, yeah, this guy's better than Mike Green as far as defense in the Sun Belt. I don't think that there's anybody. And he got 110 tackles, which, by the way, is less than Jaden Yates had.
I am typing that up as we speak.
But Jaden Yates had 114. He was just ahead of him nationally. But this guy had like 4 forced fumbles, So I mean, he had a good year, a great year. Man. He had a great year, and he did not have anywhere near a Mike Green year.
Yeah,
nowhere near.
Yeah.
Mike Green is thought about nationally as one of the best, not only at his position, but on all of defense. I don't think anybody's saying that about, no offense, they're not saying about Jaden Yates, and they're not saying about that guy from Southern either. They just look at tackles differently. You saw how they did Jason Henderson. Nobody nationally was talking about Carlton Marshall and Jason Henderson, 2 amazing middle linebackers. No one nationally was really, they were dismissing them. It's like, they're playing in Sun Belt. They're not saying that about Mike Green. They're saying, look at what that guy did against Ohio State. Look at what that guy did against everybody that he played against.
Okay, so the awards are done, and we're not going to change them, right? But so if the argument is, well, Watson Trent had 4 forced fumbles, Mike Green had 3. It's like, what do we? He led the conference in tackles for loss. He led in sacks. He led in all these other sack yardage and tackle for loss, like yardage and that kind of stuff. So if your main argument is that he had a lot of tackles, Jaden Yates had more. And if our other argument is he had 4 forced fumbles, Mike Green had 3.
Well, the reason I was bringing up the forced fumbles was not
your argument. I mean,
I know. But for anyone watching and listening, the reason that I brought up the 4 forced fumbles was because I said Jaden Yates actually had more tackles than him.
Yeah,
I was trying to not dismiss this guy as being worthy, because 4 forced fumbles with 110 tackles, That's a very good year, and I think anyone would take that out of their linebacker. I just didn't want to dismiss that and say, well, he didn't even beat Jaden Yates, because Jaden Yates had an amazing year.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, amazing year. But he didn't have a Mike Green year.
No, he had a wonderful, wonderful year. I mean, hell, first team All Sun Belt Conference performance this year, you know. But again, I'm just not a fan of spreading the awards around. If a guy's the best player in the conference, he's also got to be the best player on his side of the football. He's got to be, And if that means your offensive player of the year is also the player of the year, then so be it. It's not because it's a Marshall guy. It's just I think that's the way it should be. So. Whatever, but Mike Green's player of the year, and we freaking called it. Actually we were wrong. Actually, we were wrong because we said
defensive player.
He's a defensive player of the year candidate, and we were wrong.
Yeah, before the season, we thought that he may be, up against Henderson because again Henderson got hurt, but we thought that it might be a very short race between him and a couple other people in the conference, and he said, "Nah, not just defense. I want it all.
I want both sides. I want all three phases, Holmes."
All right, number 2, Braylon Braxton has been named Sun Belt Conference Newcomer of the Year.
Now, let me pose this question: which to you is more wild? Mike Green winning Player of the Year instead of Defensive Player of the Year, or Braylon Braxton being Newcomer of the Year and not being the full-time starter until a third of the season is over? Which of those is like weirder?
Well, and again, because they're not sharing the wealth, you have true freshman Hardy at ULM that had a lights out. I can't remember what award he won now.
Freshman, right?
Freshman of the year, yeah. But he didn't get Newcomer of the Year. And that's kind of what, a newcomer is not just a freshman now. It's a transfer.
I think that's morphed into a transfer. Might as well transfer of the year or whatever.
Yeah. But it's, again, another way for them to share and spread like you're talking about. But that is wild to me. I am so glad that he got that. To recognize what he has done since he's become the starter. Undefeated as a starter in the conference. The comeback victories, that's 2 in a row on the road now. 17 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. He did have some fumbles earlier this year and 2 against Georgia Southern, but protecting the football for by and large with pretty good success through the air and on the ground.
After the Georgia Southern game, that was it. It was no more worries about, protecting the football. And might I add, also 2-time Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Week in that shortened year as a starter. That's a pretty amazing stat, for a guy to not start out as the starter and then really only capture that about a third of the way through the season, around game 5, I mean, hell, even we were all in on Stone after the Ohio State game. We were like, all right, it's his team. Yeah. And it just,
and against Western Michigan, the out of conference schedule, everyone was still saying, yeah, you could see why Stone is the guy. The ball moves through the air with him, and that was the knock that we had on Braxton. And it wasn't a major one. We're talking about between the two, that Braxton could physically make every throw. It was kind of a read situation, a confidence to make the correct read and find that open receiver and then make the throw that we knew he could physically make. It was like Stone was a little bit better at that. And when Braxton came in early in the season, it was more throwing very short passes instead of hitting those long ones. Brother, that's not a problem now. He's stretching the field. It's not been a problem. And I feel like he's doing it better than what Stone was doing earlier this year when we were saying that Stone was a little bit better at throwing the ball downfield. He seems like he's dialed in at quarterback, and he got rewarded with a very good award here. And like you said, I'd like to see some stats on who has done that before. Yeah. because he only had 7 starts this year. 7.
Yeah, I think some of those things go hand in hand, right? He became better as a quarterback later in the year, and we saw the emergence of some wide receivers, namely Carl Chester, who was the teammate of him in Tulsa. So those guys had played together before, and as Carl kind of became more of a fixture in the offense, Braxton also became more efficient through the air, and other guys just started to show. Chuck Montgomery started showing up bigger.
Because it was at the same time that Braxton became the full-time starter after Georgia Southern. Metcalf in that Georgia Southern game is when he went down. So, Chuck Montgomery all of a sudden was thrust into starting in that slot position. And then Tyshawn Chapman got more reps because he was kind of behind those two in that slot position. And, man, he came up big in this game,
Sure did.
But tremendous, these first 2 things about the awards, just really, really good awards.
Yeah.
I've got number 3 here is more on that. It's the team, first team, second team, third team, and honorable mention. So I'm going to run through all of these for all teams and then throw it over to you. First team, Logan Osborne, Mike Green, Jaden Yates, and Ian Foster. So Osborne for offense, Green and Yates. I left out on here, I skipped over the name, but J.J. Roberts. So Green, Roberts, and Yates for defense. Ian Foster for special teams as a returner. Second team, Braylon Braxton and A.J. Turner on second team offense. Third team, both on defense, D.V. Harris and Jacoby Henderson. And then on honorable mention, we have 3 on offense, 1 on defense. Offense, you got Christian Fitzpatrick, Toby Payne, Jeremy Jones, and then on defense, Josh Moten.
Okay, so here's where I'm at, knee-jerk reaction. I think I am the happiest for the guys that got that third string nod, that third team nod, because, man, they have been very big parts of what we were doing. And it's nice to see those guys get something more than an honorable mention, right? DV and Jacoby, huge. Jacoby Henderson and JJ might have the play of the Sunbelt era so far, with that blocked field goal during 75 weekend that went for touchdown. Now, you got guys at every level on defense on the first team. We could have called this halfway through the season, right? Like, because at the beginning of the season, linebacker was very much a question mark for us. We didn't know what we were going to have. But after we saw week after week, Jaden Yates just shows up and gets 10 damn tackles every freaking week, right? And we knew what Mike Green was going to be, and we knew what JJ was going to be. So midway through the season, if you'd have said, hey, you got 3 guys on defense that are going to be first team all Sunbelt, who are they? I think we both would have went 3 for 3. Not surprising. Logan Osborne has just been a friggin' anchor, and we thought that was going to happen preseason anyway. It was pretty cool, though. It was pretty cool, though, to see some of those guys get the nod. What's surprising to me is A.J. Turner missed almost the last third of the season, or was limited in the last third of the season, and still is the second team all Sunbelt Conference running back. I mean, he was like a rocket ship before he got dinged up, and still, I don't know what his rushing total was for the last 4 games of the year. It wasn't much, but that tells you how special of a season he was having to still land as a second team all-conference running back. What a special, special kid, man. Special kid. And just one more thing, to see another offensive lineman like Jeremy Jones, that's big time, man, because those guys go so unnoticed. I think, some of those other guys deserve a little shine too, and I understand you can't honor everybody, but they really played really well as a unit. So 2 out of 5, I'll take, man. I think that's pretty good recognition for the job that Cody Creel did this year, in a revamped offensive line, losing 3 guys, I think, or 4 guys, 4 starters. 2 of them went to the NFL. I mean, your lone returner was Osborne. I mean, what a great job. Great job.
Yeah. And for anyone watching and listening that think that for these honorable mentions that these guys were snubbed, keep in mind there are 14 teams in here. Keep in mind, too, that you're going to see you're not going to see like 3 teams not have a single representative on here. People are just going to have their people. And sometimes, like, I'm going to use Christian Fitzpatrick here. Sometimes the best player on offense that you're going to find is a wide receiver on one of these other teams, and they're going to get the ball a lot more times than Christian Fitzpatrick did. We did not throw near the same amount to Christian Fitzpatrick that we did a guy like Ted Hurst for Georgia Southern, or maybe Georgia State. I can't remember which. We didn't throw to some of these other guys that got first team and everything. I think this is not saying that he wasn't first team talent, second team talent, third team talent. It's just, you look, I mean, the throws to him are not there to compete with these other guys on a stat for stat level. The production that he had, huge. And I would say that he's probably one of the best, like 1 through 3. He's probably top 3 wide receivers in this league when you look at his size, his catching ability, and all that. We just did not utilize him the way that one of these guys that's going to get 12 targets a game.
Well, and the X factor is like the excitement factor. Yeah. I mean, the circus catches, the amazing plays. I mean, he was in the center of it all season long. Perhaps the most impressive, though, is Toby Payne. Mm-hmm. We were asking, where the hell is the tight end usage early in the season? Like, with not a pass thrown to him, there wasn't a pass caught. Like, maybe through 4 games or 5 games, we finally got a pass to the tight end. Toby had 16 catches on the year. That's it. 6 of them went for touchdown. I think that's pretty damn efficient, man. That's pretty good stat right there, man. So, Marshall did pretty well. Louisiana landed the most on the all-conference teams. Marshall and James Madison were tied for second. I think Louisiana had 11. Marshall and JMU had 9 apiece. That's more than damn respectable. That's really, really good, man. Marshall had a lot of guys that really performed quite a bit this year.
We had 13.
I'm just maybe they're not counting the
honorable mention. Yeah, we had 9 on the teams. Yeah. We had 13.
That was straight from the Sunbelt article.
Yeah. Let's go on to number 4 here. Aisling McGrain and Nell Van Hoot are ranked in the ITA doubles rankings for the fall in tennis. The rankings just came out, and there were only 2 doubles teams on women in the Sun Belt, and they were one of them.
Cool. Let me guess. The other one is Old Dominion.
If I'm not mistaken, it was Old Dominion. But they were up there like way high, 10. Like 23, and then we were or 23, 27, something like that, and then we were like 103. Yeah, but still. just to be on this, I mean, you're talking about nationally, to be ranked, and when we have covered, in around the herd, they are these ones that, even when this meet, there's not a lot of wins or whatever, they are picking up wins as doubles.
Yeah, they generally win their individual matches, even in a team loss. Mm-hmm. This is a really good doubles match doubles team. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, you're right, man. 2 teams total in the entire Sun Belt get some recognition. And I always think of tennis, and the first thing that comes to my mind is, of course, the old Pac-10 or Pac-12, whatever, because those Olympic sports, those teams just freaking thrive in. So you think of multiple doubles teams on those teams are probably catching these rankings. It's not like one team from 100 different schools.
Yeah, like Stanford's got 4 of the top 15.
Right.
Figure, that's what I figure. I haven't checked, but just using Stanford as an example, that's the first one that pops into my head.
Yeah. So there's a pretty cool thing to have one in the top. What did you say they were?
103, I think.
I'll take it.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Number 5 here, and again, this is about the 4th or 5th time that I've had to say this name, and it's not on Herd Zone for me to get it correctly, so I hope I'm not butchering this, but Ksenia Lunyashina has won her 3rd consecutive Sun Belt Conference Swimmer of the Week award, to the surprise of no one. because, as we mentioned on the last episode, she broke 2 program records on back-to-back days during that Meet of Champions, House of Champions, whatever it was. And they did not have the award just came out. There was such a delay, because of the timing of when that meet was. So they just came out with that. I think it was yesterday or early this morning, but 3rd consecutive. And I'd like to remind everyone, this is an 18-year-old true freshman for the Herd.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, 3 straight. Wow. I would like to know. I would be inclined to know if Marshall has had an athlete in any sport, how many times we've had one of those win an of the week ever, since those kind of became a thing. I mean, we've had some all time. You could probably look at Randy Moss and be like, okay, well, he's wide receiver of the week, every week. But I mean, that's amazing, man. That's amazing.
That's who came to mind when you were asking that hypothetical question. I was like, well, Randy Moss won Best Player on Earth yet again this week. But no, this is super impressive. It shows you where this program's going. Moving to the Sun Belt. We had that 1 year that we had to be in the Missouri Valley. Yeah, Missouri Valley Conference, and we've moved to the Sun Belt. I feel like they are trying to get more programs in to the Sun Belt Conference, but right now it looks like we're owning the pool.
Yeah, well, at least she is. Jiminy Christmas. That's pretty wild. That's a task for Steve Cotton to come up with. Like who is the last Herd athlete to go 3 weeks in a row or more of winning the of the week? That'd be something I'd like to know.
Yeah. If I had to guess, man, it would have to be something like John Goddard's ridiculous 2004, because every single week he was like, sometimes he was the offense, because he was returning a fumble that he forced. He picked it up and scoop and score. So he got a forced fumble recovery, and a defensive touchdown all in the same play. And it was week in, week out, kind of like what Mike Green's doing. But, we were in different waters back then than you are now.
Player of the year, and if I'm not mistaken, he was defensive player of the week once, maybe one time.
Yeah.
Stop sharing the wealth, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry, if you want to win the award, get better.
Get better. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Number 6, and our final one, there is transfer portal news. It's that time of the year. It's going to really kick off next week when the portal is actually open. But some players this week across the country are going ahead and throwing their name out there on social media, but it'll actually become official, I believe, on Monday is the date when this opens, on the 9th. So we have exactly one as of this recording, unless I've missed someone in the last
one.
So up until 60 minutes before, this is all I'd seen. But Isaiah Gibson Sr. has entered the transfer portal. It will become official on Monday.
Yeah.
Gibby did not play at all this year. He came back for this year. We were really looking forward to having him and Legs and others on that already wildly successful defensive line. I can't imagine being able to put him in there as a run stopper and a guy taking up, 2 defenders to free up someone on the end. But he had an injury, and as he was rehabbing, it just looked like it was best to keep him out the entire year. So now he has 1 year of eligibility left.
Yeah. Gibb would have been a huge piece. Could you imagine those two guys? I mean, Chris Thomas played really, really well this year.
Yeah.
And could you imagine being able to also rotate in Gibby? Man, I mean,
we had him pegged as a starter, and he would have been. He would have been. And, I really think that we would have had a drastically different defensive team with him on there. It's the same as if you had – I'm not saying these two are the same level. But if J.J. Roberts had been injured, our defensive backfield would not have been what it was. And with Gibby injured, our defensive front, as great as it was, with all the players that we had, it would have just been another level.
Yeah, it would have been better. I mean, I don't feel weird saying that his presence throughout the entire season probably would have allowed Mike Green to get 2 or 3 more sacks throughout the season. You know what I mean? I mean, it's nothing against the other guys. It's just like you're better with another great player. So, but
6'4", 324, right up the middle, right on the center and everything. You got to feel like the teams wouldn't have been able to run between the tackles as well. Legs is good. Chris Thomas is good. Those guys are good. But what you're adding there is depth. When you can bring in a Chris Thomas fresh, after the first couple of series or rotations, and you bring him in, he's instantly going to be better because he's not been out there battling with some of these offensive linemen that are still out there from the first snap.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about, the all conference DB Harris. Weapon after weapon after weapon, right? I mean, Ralph Street was just in he had the most loaded arsenal on this freaking roster, and boy, oh boy, they exploited the talents of one another so well. But look, this is the thing about the portal. I don't know why people jump off the cliff every time somebody puts their name in the portal. You can't do that, because over the past 2-3 years already, we've seen a turnover of 40 some players every year, and it's worked out pretty good in our favor. We lose some playmakers, but we also bring in some playmakers. The portal is a two-way street. Now, it might be a little bit different this year. There's some coaching rumors out there. We're going to talk about them in a little bit. And if that kind of stuff happens, you might see a lot of guys that enter the portal. But that happens everywhere there's a coaching change. Everywhere. It just might sting a little bit because Marshall could be a conference champion and then losing a lot of the playmakers if our head coach goes somewhere else. It's the nature of the game,
I've said it every year that we've had this show. You cannot get so up in arms about the transfer portal when we're losing people. And a lot of them last year, when we did the tracker, and that's what I was putting this on here to say, that we're going to have the tracker again and make it easy on the website. And we're also going to have it as the thing so we can talk about who's in and who's coming in, who's going out. But you cannot get overly excited when we get Kalen Laburn and have him just dominate, but also say, man, I can't stand this transfer portal era because we lost, this third string punter, and that's a lot of what it was. Is like you would see people on social media, more so on Facebook than Twitter, but you would see people on there going, I just can't stand this transfer portal era, man. This has ruined college football. And, oh, man, look at all the people that we've lost, because our article had been posted on there. And they're like, I counted 28 people, and it's still January or whatever it was. And then they would turn right back around and say, man, I love having Braylon Braxton. Man, I love it. You cannot say it's ruining it and then go out here and celebrate that our 15 best players are people that we brought in from the transfer portal.
Yeah.
So just be patient. As we say every year, we're going to continue to say this. You're going to hear us say this. You can't pluck people out of the portal until they go into it. So the first things that you're going to see is a lot of people leaving the transfer or leaving our team into the transfer portal. And it's happening everywhere. If you go follow another team, it's going to happen there. But that's where we get them from. They don't come over here from the magic unicorn farm. They have to come from the transfer portal. You see people going into the portal before you get people in. So you're going to see a mass exodus. Be prepared for it. Once they're in there, then you're going to see us replenishing our roster and building it. And that's what's happened the last 2 to 3 years.
So there's also other things that folks need to be reminded of. Not everybody, you alluded to this, not everybody that goes into the portal was a contributor. Some guys were walk-ons, paying their own tuition, paying their own way. They enter the transfer portal looking for a scholarship opportunity, right, to lighten the financial burden on themselves and the family. You can't fault a guy for that. Some guys were contributors. They're looking to get a bigger role on a bigger team. Okay. It is what it is. But without those guys, without wide receiver X leaving and going into the portal, there's not a roster spot for Christian Fitzpatrick. Right. And he comes in and is a player. You know what I say all the time about the transfer portal and the ins and outs. It's never, I use wide receivers as an example there, but very rarely is it a tit for tat guy, right? When some guy enters, I view that as a roster spot that had just opened to make a position group better. I don't know which one, but they have a target. They have a list. They have guys that they covet in a unit. They want to get better. So that's what they're going to tackle first. If we're overloaded at wideout, and they, just for example, and a guy goes in, but we're thin at defensive line, you might lose a wideout, but you're going to go get a defensive lineman because that's what you need to get better to hopefully win more games. So you have to look at it. You can't look at it on an individual basis. You have to let it run its course, and then you step back and go, we upgraded or we downgraded as a whole. That's kind of how it works, because we've seen Huff add guys up. Remember a couple of years ago, he added a guy game week, 3 days before kickoff. We got a guy, and ultimately that guy did not remain on the team. He transferred out or whatever, but the portal is this weird kind of thing, man, if it ever gets under wraps, not as far as going in and coming out, but like the windows and when you can and when you can't, man, it's crazy. It's never over. I mean, it's really never over. We've heard Huff tell us, like, we can get guys and we don't want to talk about them until we get them to sign a financial aid agreement, because they can go right back into the portal and go to somebody else. So we don't want other teams to know we have certain guys yet. And I think that's the stance that a lot of coaches have to take. Russ, I know you talk about playing poker, and when you get dealt a hand, do you make sure you show every single player at the table the cards you're holding?
Oh, no. I absolutely do. It's established dominance. Yeah.
No, you're holding all that close to the vest. And the portal, to me, and recruiting, this is a giant game of poker, right? You can't show what you have. Otherwise, your competition knows how to play you. So you can't jump off a cliff every time a guy goes into the portal. We're going to lose some players. We're going to lose some guys that we rooted our asses off for this year that made great plays for us this year. We're going to lose some of them.
Yeah.
We've lost them every year.
Yeah.
But guys come right in that we will cheer our asses off for, that will make big plays for us in 2025. Right?
Final word on the portal is we are going to have this website. The article may be up as early as when you're watching this. When this gets posted, I may have it up already, because right now it's only one player. Right. But we're going to have this up here, and we're going to track those that are leaving, those that are coming in, those that enter and then withdraw their name and stay. And last year we had to add this category, but those who transfer in never even make it to a practice and then transfer back out. Yeah. So it's going to be wild, but things to remember, again, you'll see a lot more people enter the transfer portal to leave. We can't add them if they're still here. Like you said, we've got to have a roster spot. And then you also need to remember that the transfer portal is simply, those windows are for people to declare. We do not have to bring people in by the time the transfer portal closes. We can bring them in anytime after that, as long as they are fully enrolled in school for the semester that they would be playing for us.
Right.
All right. So that is the end of our 6 things this week every Herd fan needs to know, brought to you by Ignite Link.
How about we talk about this kick-ass game that went down in Harrisonburg last weekend?
Let's do it.
I mean, freaking instant classic. I alluded to it in the open. 35-33. The Herd gets the big-time win at Bridgeforth in double overtime. Man, oh man. Some of those game notes we were talking about, JMU needed this game to go get their 9th win. They needed this game to stay undefeated at home. Marshall, of course, needed this game to solidify their spot in the Conference USA Championship game. This was kind of like a rinse and repeat of the Old Dominion game the week before from the indicators standpoint. Second game in a row, Marshall was outgained. Marshall was outpossessed. They didn't really win any of the indicators. I mean, at least at Old Dominion, they won that turnover battle, and that was kind of the difference. It wasn't that way in this James Madison game. Nevertheless, man, the Herd wins an instant classic. The ballsiest, gutsiest calls to get the touchdown and then to score the 2-point conversion. I mean, I don't know how those dudes were able to drag that set back to the freaking locker room. Those were some gutsy ass calls, man. The videos are out there, of course. I had to listen on the radio because I was on my way back. I was driving back from just getting home from work. So I was listening to Steve Cotton on the call. And really all I got to hear was, shoot, man, I think I got to listen to the drive. Maybe I got to listen from them trading touchdowns in the fourth, maybe. And then it was like the drive to get Veerhoff set up to win it in regulation. I think that's about, and then the overtime. But anyway, let's talk about these indicators. Total yards, time of possession, first downs, third downs, all swept by James Madison. Marshall gets the penalty indicator, and we push the turnovers.
Yeah.
Marshall is outgained 382 to 261 in this one, outpossessed 35-33 to 24-27. 22 first downs for JMU, only 17 for the Herd. 4 of 13 on third down for JMU. Marshall just slightly worse at 4 of 14. And penalties, Marshall got the edge, 5 for 25, 6 for 55 for JMU, and turnovers 1 apiece. JMU, Russ, this is one you got to be proud of, I think. At least I am. JMU in the Sun Belt era has 3 home losses, period. 3. 2 of them are to Marshall. 2 of them, by the way, are in overtime. So one of the Herds games and the other one lost to App State, also went to overtime. Marshall's now 4-1 against James Madison all time, and they've never lost on the road. How about that? And for all those wins and all those games that they win, and they win a lot of them at Bridgeforth, they've never beaten the Herd. And the last thing, I want to get your opinion on this real quick. I don't care if you think other fans might think this. I want your opinion. Is this the rivalry week matchup now for the Herd? Should it be Marshall, James Madison, giving who the other East Division teams that are locked up, because you're not getting App, you're not getting Georgia Southern, they're locked together. So if you don't want James Madison, who are you going to take? Coastal? You going to take Old Dominion? Is this the matchup?
It is. And, you keep thinking Georgia State and Georgia Southern would be, but Georgia Southern, and there's just so many different good rivalries in the Sun Belt East, and a lot of it comes from the Southern Conference days and stuff like that. Us and App seems to be like that would be a great one. Us and Georgia Southern would be a great one. I wouldn't mind ODU because we were there in Conference USA and everything, but it just doesn't seem to have the rivalry that has happened here now of each team. We played 3 times. We went there and beat them. They came here and beat us. We went there and beat them now. Everybody beating each other on the road. All 3 games have not been blowouts, even though that game we didn't have much offense at home last year with Rasheen Ali being out and Cam Fancher being beaten up. It was 3-2 at halftime. It was this is the rivalry. This is it. And they've got a tremendous fan base. They've got a great program. It just seems like they fit the same things as remember when we came up, from FCS and at the time 1AA, them FCS. It just seems like it's so similar, to what they did and what we did. And it just seems like a natural fit. And the fans are not like hating each other. They're just loving to see 2 good programs go at it.
Yeah. Now, currently,
that's how rivalries start. And then then Molotov cocktails come out.
Yeah. It doesn't take much, and this one might have pushed some of those fans to that side, losing at home, double overtime, and they wanted all this stuff. And that was, they turned out for that game. They did. But look, we've played James Madison, 5 times? We've played Old Dominion 10 times. The reason that one's not a rivalry, we're 9-1 against them. Yeah. That you can't have a one-sided deal. And I think you're right. I think JMU fits the bill. I think the Sun Belt looked at this game potentially when the schedules were remaining and go, you know what, this one probably will be for something. You're not going to take App State and Georgia Southern away. That's rivalry week, man. They've played like 40 some times. You know what I mean? It's not, you're not taking that away. You should.
And the rest of them too, Coastal and ODU. ODU's 6.5+ hours away, with, you have to stop again. It's more like 7. Coastal's, 7.5. It's just, this seems to be, it's 4 to 4.5 hours away. Them and Boone both are very similar as far as drive distance. The programs are similar. It just seems right and it feels right.
Yeah, I'm with you. Make it happen, Sun Belt. Let's get into the game here. The Herd was down 17 to freaking nothing at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
This one looked like it was, getting out of hand, already out of hand. Because everybody will sing the woes about, Huff and this staff can't make adjustments at halftime. They can't win on the road. And, I'm not saying those are unfounded because the Herd's lost a lot of games on the road, up until last week. And whatever they did, man, it worked. The Herd came out and scored 17 points in the final 5 minutes, basically of the third quarter, and then added a field goal in the fourth. And, then JMU got one, and then, traded some other scores, and then the Herd went on a long drive with a chance to win it in regulation, and bad snap, fumbled hold, and there went that opportunity, and JMU picked it up, and they were off to the races. And like, what the hell's going on here? Then you get to overtime, you trade field goals, you trade scores, and then JMU misses the 2-point, and Marshall gets the 2-point, and you're like, holy hell, what a game. I know I summed that up in 2 minutes, less than that, but wow, what a game. And all I got to do was hear it on the radio.
So I got a little thing here. I've got first quarter yards and then first half stats. Mm-hmm. And I want you guys to keep in mind when we're talking about the first quarter, we only had 2 possessions. And it was for 3 minutes or something like this, 2 3-and-outs. First quarter, rushing 4 yards, passing 10 yards. Total 14 yards in the first quarter.
Killing it.
James Madison had 124 rushing, 88 passing for 212 yards in the first quarter.
A 20X is never good, man. That's
no. First half, Marshall is all the way up to 22 yards rushing at halftime, 29 yards passing, 51 total yards. But we did keep them in the second quarter from doing too much more. They're at 158, 111 for only 269 at halftime. But when you got 212 in the first, they, on their first 3 drives, they were just killing us. Mm-hmm. They had 3 drives and we only had 2. And it was already 17 to nothing. They had these, gaudy stats up here. We could not stop them, and we could not. We just went 3 and out. The first series, you could just see the way it was going. We had 3rd and 3, and Braxton's helmet comes off when he gets tackled. So he has to go out, and they bring in Stone. And then we have a false start. So that makes it 3rd and 8. And then we, Stone throws a ball that's just like skips it to the wide receiver that's trying to dive for it, and we don't get the first down. It's just, that's the way it was going. We couldn't stop anything. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to share those yardage stats with you before you went on.
No, the main point was that whatever you think about this team or historically how they've performed or whatever, out of the last, since that loss at Georgia Southern, this has been a completely different team.
Yeah.
They've found ways to win. They've won in dominating fashion, like against Coastal, like against Southern Miss. They've won tight games. They've won games they had no business winning. That's a mark of a great team. I'm not going to get all hokey and be like, oh, this is a team of destiny. No, they're just a really good, solid team. They find ways to freaking win football games.
If the offense is down, they've picked it up with special teams and defense. If special teams makes a gaffe, somebody's picking them up on offense. It's just been that way over these final 6-7 weeks. Mm-hmm. I also need to throw out, I had these up here, James Madison had 14 first downs at halftime. Marshall had 2, and that came on right before the end of the half. They finally Braxton got a long run, and then we passed for 1. time of possession at halftime is 22:55 for James Madison to 7:05 for us. 23-7.
Yeah. So this is one of those games where when somebody inevitably said at some point, the second half was as good for Marshall as the first half was as bad for Marshall.
Yeah.
This was a tale of two games. This is it's a testament to the don't quit. They knew what was on the line, dude. They could have packed it in. They could have packed it in. They knew they had to win the game, especially by halftime. They knew they had to win the game to go to the conference championship game.
People are going to say whatever when I tell them this. I'm not lying. I'm not making it up. You can call the James Madison guys that I was with. They said, Russ, how you feeling? And they weren't rubbing it in my face. I mean,
well, you just made a 5-hour trip and
they just said, how you feeling? And I just said, man, I never say never.
Yeah.
But that's the worst half that I've ever seen us play. And if we play like that, I mean, we'd have to have drastically different results in the second half before this one gets out of hand. I didn't say, oh, man, we're primed for a comeback. But I didn't say we were giving up either, and each one of them said, and this is the part that I thought somebody might not believe. They said, it's not safe at 17-0. I mean, look at what just happened. I just read that off. 23 minutes to 7 minutes.
Yeah.
269 yards to 51 yards. And they said, it's not safe. And they said, with us lately, man, it's the tale of two halves.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what went down. And I didn't call it. They called it. I'm not saying that I'm some prognosticator. They said it's the tale of two halves, and you might come out and just dominate us. And, man, it didn't start right away. We came out better. Yeah. But when the back-to-back touchdowns within 7 seconds happened, that place got real quiet. All you heard was Herd fans.
Well, and special shout out to Green JD, right? Because he's been – that you can tell when I know you watch the rewatches and you can tell that opposing offenses have been trying to pick on him for a couple weeks now. So it was really nice for him to just be like, here's the big, I'm going to flip you the bird and take this one to the house when we really, really need it. Yeah. Big time play from JD. So let's talk about what all went down. Braylon Braxton, 13-24 for $120 and a touch, 17 carries for just 15 yards. And a touchdown. He was sacked 4 times on the day. Jordan Houston, 6 carries, 50 yards, 3 receptions for 20. Tyshawn Chapman, 2 carries for 23 yards and a touchdown. It had to be the one in OT. Braylon Brown, 3 receptions, 39 yards, led the herd. Chuck Montgomery, 3 receptions, 29 yards, but he did catch the big 2-point conversion in double OT. And Toby Payne, 1 reception, 16 yards, and a touchdown. On defense, it was A.G. McGee and Jaden Yates leading the way. 9 total tackles apiece. McGee 4 solo and a half tackle for the loss. Yates 1 solo. And then J.J. and Jacoby 8 tackles apiece, both also 4 solo. J.J. adds a half tackle for loss, and Jacoby gets a pass defended. Impact plays okay for the herd. 2 sacks, 1 by Mike Green, and Braden Ward gets the other. 6 total tackles for loss, 1 pass defended. That's pretty low. And an interception that also went for touchdown, as the aforementioned Jadarius Green McKnight takes it to the house when the herd really, really freaking needed it. Reese Verhoff, 2 of 2 on field goals, long of 49, clutch-ass kick, by the way, in overtime. 3 of 3 on extra points. Alec Clark, 5 punts, 227 total yards, 45.4 yard average, 1 touchback, 2 inside the 20, and a long of 56. Now, y'all remember, it was a freaking cold night.
18 degrees.
So it was like kicking freaking bricks out here for these guys. So it was impressive to put one through from 49 in the clutch overtime pressure on top of you. And then Ian Foster, 3 kick returns, 102 total yards with an average of 34, long of 46. Came out after the game. I think that he was leading the nation in average kick return yardage. So that's 2 in 2 years. If you guys remember, Jaden Harrison did it last year. So Herd's up to something in the kick return game. Russ, let's roll right into some grades, man. What do you got for Braylon Braxton?
I'm going to preface all this stuff with there's going to be a lot of people calling me crazy when I give these grades out, but I have reasoning for them. I'm going with an A- for Mr. Braxton, and the only real dings was there were a couple times that wide receivers were wide open, or running back out of the flat was wide open, and he threw elsewhere and it was incomplete.
Mhm.
And then a couple times he had some high throws, and both that I can remember that really hurt was we had first down catches by Christian Fitzpatrick, but because he had to leave his feet for the high catch, he got popped and the ball came out and he landed outside of bounds. So A minus, but I mean, what a game for him. The stats aren't going to blow you away, but everything that he did after halftime to lead us to that victory was just incredible.
He gets 4 letter grade raise. Even if you gave him an F, I was going to give him an A minus because he recovered the fumble on the 1 to go to keep the Herd alive late in that game, man. What a, it's your day when something like that happens, bro. I mean, like, who would have thought, okay, Ethan Payne, the bruiser, is going to bust in from a yard out or a couple yards out. Like, no problem, right? No problem. Ball pops out, and who's Johnny on the spot? It's Braylon Braxton. Woo! That's a big-time play right there when you really have to have it. Okay, overall for this offense, not a great day in the first half. We've talked about it. Rallied a little bit in the second half. Got a big uplift from the special teams and the defense, but it's an offensive grade. What you got?
I'm giving them a C right in the middle because it could not have gotten any worse in the first half. And it wasn't amazing in the second half when you're looking at the stats up and down. But if you go watch that final drive when we're going down to kick the game winner,
the potential winner,
they couldn't do a thing with us. We just ran wherever we wanted to. We threw wherever we wanted to. And if we didn't have to kick a field goal there, like that was, let's say that was early in the fourth quarter, I think we could have put up another 200 yards. We had just gotten them to the point where they did not know what they could do to stop us. And the offensive play calling and the execution of these plays with the reverses and the in motion and the things that we did, that brings up what would have been an F infinity, for the first half to a C. And I don't take that lightly. I'm not saying that, a C is usually right in the middle. They had to bring it up quite a bit to get to a C, so I feel like this is a good grade for them.
Well, yeah, based on some of the things you said earlier, I mean, the yardage disparity in the first, man, dude, it was ugly. It was freaking ugly. And it bounced back to the best you're going to get to freaking C.
Now, we only had, a lot of people were thinking, with the yardage and everything, we, again, had 7 minutes of possession in the first half. We only had 4 possessions. All right. Defense is the same for me. And it's a C. And it's the same thing. As bad as we played in the first half, I mean, the first quarter, 212 yards that we gave up, we couldn't stop a high school team, the way it was going. And I'm not talking about bad about our players, because somebody on the other side of the ball has to do something, and they came to play. So I'm not saying that the only reason James Madison did something is because we were playing bad. James Madison was playing that good, and they, again, would have had an F minus whatever. And their play in the second half, James Madison, if you look at the first half, 269, I think they ended up with 382. So that's counting the second half and overtime. We gave up a total of 113 yards. I want to give them better, but because I gave the offense a C, I wanted to do the exact same grade. Now, these are my grades. They're my reasoning. That's why I'm doing that. But the defense was absolutely lights out in the second half, and I feel like it should be higher, but I'm kind of putting offense and defense together in a C right in the middle.
So here's the thing, right? Because what we experienced in the first half, JMU experienced in the second half.
Yes.
Right? And when would you rather have it? Probably in the first half, because you don't know if you're going to be able to stop the bleeding, and they couldn't stop the bleeding, and they let the Herd back in it, and then we're hanging around, and now we've got a lead, and holy shit, it's overtime. And one play, we made one more play than they did when it mattered, and that was literally the difference in the game. Special teams,
A+, and the only reason it's not A+++ is even though the play did not officially happen because of a penalty, we had a punt as we were trying to return it. The punt ricocheted up and hit a guy in the shin or the calf, and that was recovered by James Madison, and that would have been bad. But the play didn't count because they had illegal formation. So you can't really ding us for that. And that is one of those freaky bounces anyway. It's not like the guy was in the wrong spot. He's where he is going to be 100 times out of 100. The ball just bounced and went to the right, and it hit him. A plus, man. You look at the return game to get us at the great field position that we were at, 3 returns all around the midfield mark by Foster. You look at all the touchbacks that we had. You look at the ridiculously good punting by Clark. You look at the clutch field goals and extra points. And, I always count 2-point conversions as special team as well. That won the game. So how can you get any less than A+?
Respectfully and fairly, I couldn't go A+ because you had an opportunity to win it in regulation. You didn't even need overtime, and that one slid away and got scary there for a minute because that ball started going the other way. Ultimately it didn't matter. But if Marshall loses this game in overtime, you're going to point to that play at the end of regulation and go, we had a shot and we blew it. We don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Here's the deal for me on the way I graded it. It's the same thing as when we were playing and we had the onside kick that we didn't even line up to field an onside kick. And, we had a couple of gaffes there. They had the snap that went over Clark's head into the end zone and everything. I scored it really the same way in this game. Is they had all this other stuff so much. I mean, a 49-yarder in overtime. All the different things that they did in this game, special teams wise, even though you're talking about a game winner.
Yeah.
And but the snap was right there. The guy gets it. Clark gets it. And just as he transfers it, he bobbles it.
Right. I know. I'm just saying they had a great game. Game as a unit.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that even though that happened, when you look at the 2-point conversion and the way that we called it and the way that we executed it and ran it, the field goals, the returns, the punts and everything, it outweighs it. I don't care that he bobbled it. I don't care that we missed it. That to me just added to the aura of this game.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm giving him an A+.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, of course, the touchdown is an offense play, but a 2-point conversion for me is always a special teams play too.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that the offense is on the field. It's a special teams play. And that might be the play call of the year, because even though it might not be play of the year, it's going to be one of the top plays of the year, right? And immediately that's what you'll think of. You'll think of Alec Clark saving the punt against ULM. That's a huge play. You'll think of the blocked field goal in 75 week. You'll think of this 2-point conversion, right? So, but you can't just call, hey, guys, go out there and block that field goal and return it for a touchdown. That's not a play call.
Right.
Hey, Alec, go out there and save our asses on this snap that you let get away from you, right? You don't call that. But whatever this play call was, I'd love to know the terminology that they called in, like what Daggy said to Braxton, what the play call was named. I'd love to know what that's called.
I don't have that, but on the spaces, the post-game spaces, as I was driving home, Jeremy Beeks, who is on there every week for post-game, he told me that he had listened to the post-game press conference by Coach Huff, and he didn't say what the play call name was, but he had a great story about it. And I don't know if you listened to the post-game or not, but they were talking at breakfast the day of the game, and they said, how about that Georgia game last night? It went to 8 overtimes.
Yeah.
And jokingly, Coach Huff looks at Daggy and says, how many 2-point conversions plays do you have? And he said, I've got 4. He said, but if it goes into 8 overtimes, we'll just reverse them. Yeah. So I thought that was great, but they were actually, here a 2-point play came into play,
Yeah.
and he had 4 in his bag. So this was one of those 4.
Yeah.
And just the way they lined up, and it just seemed to run off of the way that the touchdown had happened right before this. It's similar but not the same. It just reminded me a lot of that Boise at Oklahoma, 2 different plays
Mhm.
back to back. But yeah, that was a great call. Great
Yeah.
call.
Yeah. That was an unbelievable call. How about, all right, we got to get moving through these.
Yeah.
How about coach grade?
Well, this is where people are going to at me, but it's right down here. I'm going with an A plus. And how can you come out as flat as we did, as bad as we did in that first half? I'm going to tell you that I want you right now, you KD, not the listener. I want you to tell me your grade for Bobby Pruitt in the MAC championship game.
Oh yeah, 99.
Yeah,
It's like that.
is it A plus?
No, of course not. But it was an
No?
epic it was an epic all-time
Okay.
win. But now, if you say, "Hey, what's your fourth quarter grade?" You know what I mean? It's like
No.
But holistically, no, I wouldn't say that, because in order to have some big comeback, you have to inevitably go down big. Right?
Yeah. Right.
But to your point earlier, they were playing really, really
They
well.
were playing out of their minds, and I'm not saying that it was all on the players and none on the coaches. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But I'm viewing this like, when I look at the Miracle in Mobile and the GMAC Bowl in 2001, I give Pruitt an A plus. I don't care that we were down 38-8 at the half. That to me shows that he had to do so much more at halftime to get them there. When you and I were there in person for the 99 MAC championship game against Western Michigan, and I'm thinking it was 30-7. I don't remember if that's correct or not, but we were so far down and everything. That to me he went into the locker room and he just said, we're going out and we're winning this game. So it reminded me of those. And that's why I'm saying an A plus, because we could have folded. We could have went in and said, guys, it's not our night, or guys, let's try to chip away or something. It just seemed like we came out, and whatever happened at halftime to get to that, whatever adjustments that were made, it's not just the points that we scored. We gave up in 2 quarters and 2 overtime periods 113 yards.
Yeah.
And we did that, and that's why I'm giving an A plus, because every single coach, this is not just a head coach grade. The special teams coach, Cody Creel, as an offensive lineman, he lost 2 offensive linemen during this game. Osborne came back into the game. Ramsey did not. Defense, we were already down Josh Moten. Legs didn't play in the entire first half that I saw. We had all these different injuries that were out. And every single coach went in there and they got their team ready to come out and play the best half that they could possibly play to come back from that. And I'm giving everybody an A plus for that.
You bring up a good point that I want to cover, and this is not something that we do grades on, because we don't grade injuries. But I saw after the fact, and you mentioned that Logan went out and Bryce went out and didn't come back, and Josh Moten was out, Landon Watson was out, Jabari Ishmael was out.
Yeah.
Like, these are playmakers, dude.
Big playmakers.
Marshall's defense was by no means near 100%. Like, at this point in the season, nobody's 100%. Get it. I got that.
Yeah.
But they're still playing.
Yeah.
So when you can lose a guy, maybe 2. Marshall was nowhere near where they should have been had those guys been on the field, and they still were able to do just enough. That too speaks to the grade that these coaches were able to do. So in retrospect, no, I probably wouldn't go A plus, but man, you talking about from a halftime adjustment standpoint on, A plus.
And you look at these play calls. We talked about the balls to call them, but and this was another thing on special teams, but the fake field goal was one of the big things. That's a coaching call. That's an execution play, and that is a special teams play. But just the coaching calls that they did, and when to go for it, when to call what they called, the execution of it. Yeah, I'm going A plus. And it's fine for everybody to disagree. I'm just telling you, these are my reasonings why.
Yeah,
It reminds me of those great comebacks, and you can't have an A+ from Pruitt to, like you said, you can't have the great comeback without being down so much. And we were down so much, but we could have folded, and man, it would have been, everyone would have got an F all the way around if it was the same in the first and second halves. There's no sugarcoating that. I may have made up a new letter to grade how bad it was, because it was bad. But the coaching staff gets an A+ for everything that they did from halftime on, but definitely the calls that they made. These are just legendary for this game.
Yeah, the last thing I want to say about this is, at a certain point they were down. They knew they were kind of playing with house money. Like, you have to let it all hang.
Yeah.
If you're not going to let it hang right now, then when the hell are you going to let it hang?
When are you going to?
Yeah. Right. So, and they did, and it worked out. The fake field goal, and all, it was pretty close to a masterclass in the last part of that game. So I'll give them a hell of a lot of credit for that. And it was really nice to see them like, you know what? We're either going to win or freaking lose, man. So we might as well let it all hang out. All right. Coaching rumor aside, what do you got from the fans this week?
C, because there were so many people that were saying fire everybody and don't let them back on the bus when we were down. And
no, wait, give them an extension. I changed my mind.
Yeah, after the game, they were like, man, if we don't extend everybody, so just because of the back and forth thing, I just find it funny. But C, because it's right in the middle, right there with offense and defense.
All right, last one. Overall, what you got?
Overall, A+. It's an all-time game. It's put us in the Sun Belt Conference Championship. Hell of a comeback, and the way that it went down just reminded me so much of those two games that I've already mentioned right now. It's, for me, that's a top 3 comeback right now. I could probably come up and think of others, but that one, because of how bad it was in the first half, remind me of those two games, and those were all-timers.
And I tell you what, I'm going to drive that grade home a little bit more. I think what a lot of fans saw, I think maybe what I saw, and I feel like I'm in tune with this sort of thing. I think I saw the birth of a rivalry before we saw heated games, and they were fun, hard fought. But this particular game, when you see something like that, 20 years from now, if you continue to have great games and great you'll go back to 2024 and you'll go, this is when it really all started here, this game.
Yeah, because this is a game that you'd see on ESPN Classics if that was still around.
But even if that doesn't happen, you're like, you know what? Marshall won the East. They needed that game. And, here we'd only lost twice at Bridgeforth in the SBC. And there's so much going into that. So if these games continue to be meaningful, which they feel like they will, I think for a lot of fans in real time, but even more fans 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they'll point back to this one and go, that's when this one was birthed. That's when this game was birthed, was that 2024 double overtime game at Bridgeforth. That's freaking cool, man. That's freaking cool. All right, real fast. Offensive MVP.
Braxton.
All right, defensive.
McKnight. Jadarius Green McKnight, that was the play of the game. I don't care. It's kind of like the special teams play with JJ and the block kick and everything, even though that's only one specific thing. That was absolutely huge. That was the momentum shifter. That tied it back up. That leveled everything. He gets it for me.
I got to give a quick shout out to our buddy on this one because I was just getting off work apparently when that happened. I hadn't gotten even to my car yet. And I turned my phone on, and I got a text message from our buddy Brian Price. He's like, I called that interception. Brian's got a history of doing that, by the way. I'm telling you, he does. I've been standing beside him when he's called like pick sixes before.
Yeah.
And so I saw that, and I was like, I hadn't seen anything. I don't know. So immediately I go to Twitter, and there's the video of the play, and I'm like, hell yeah. So shout out to Brian. I want you to know I include you in the show because I believe that you called that one. Special teams MVP.
The entire unit. I cannot give it to anybody else, and I don't feel like of any time this is the week that this is not a cop-out.
Yeah.
Every single one of them from the fake field goal to the returns, everything we've talked about.
Yep, I dig it. I dig it all. Let's real quick go around the herd if we can, and then one more thing.
All right, so we are going to start out with Hang on one second here. Track and field. The season starts on Friday with the Marshall Opener is what it's called, and that's a great name for it because that's what it is. It opens at Marshall. The schedule is also out. It's on Herd Zone and it's on social media, so get on over there and look and see when you can come over and check that out. Swim and dive currently at the U.S. Open, where Paige Banton, Madeline Hart, Esther Laban, Ksenia Lunyashina, and Maya McBride and Audrey West are all competing, and they're in several different events. This is day 2 of 4 or 3 of 4. I can't remember, but they don't have anything on even the official page that I can find meaningful things. It seems like they're just doing the heats right now.
Oh, got you.
Women's basketball. They absolutely destroyed Salem 98-41 at home on Sunday. Now, this was one of those, they're a Division II school here in West Virginia, and they're actually winless on the year. So it's not like we were going up against a major test, but anytime you win 98-41, I feel like you're doing something. You still have to hit your shots. You still have to get those rebounds and steals. But
speaking of, 60 freaking rebounds? 60.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
They are going to Florida on Sunday. They're playing at Florida.
Oh, the return game. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Men's basketball. They lost at Western Kentucky 90-82 on Saturday. And then they beat Morehead State 80-77 Wednesday night. Tough game that they were up pretty good. And then they ended up winning that game, but only by 3. They had to go on a couple of runs just to get it back to there. They are traveling to UNC Wilmington Saturday at 2 p.m. And then finally, men's soccer beat NC State at home on Saturday 2-1 to advance to the quarterfinals. And they are facing number 12 SMU in Dallas on Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern time, I think it is.
Probably.
I had to check.
The quest for the natty is right here. It's like right here, man. It's so cool. Man, it's so cool. I'm not saying I didn't think we'd make it this far. Obviously, I did, because this team just feels like they need an opportunity. And it was, we talked about our backs were against the wall. We were missing some key players against West Virginia in that tournament game. And now once the Herd is back to as full strength as you can be this time of year, nobody wants to play them. I don't care who they are. Nobody wants to play the Herd, man. This is freaking awesome. Freaking awesome. Awesome around the Herd segment real quick. Look, we got one more thing to talk about, and I'm sorry that this episode is now an hour and 17 minutes long. We told you it was going to be football-centric, and we just can't not talk about this now. It's out there. Yeah. I mean, it's out there. The rumors, it's more than just rumors. It's made its way to national media now, that Coach Huff is set to be named the head coach at Southern Miss. And nothing's been said because our season is still going on, so there is a big section of the fan base that thinks that's a done deal. There's a big section of the fan base that thinks it's all smoke and mirrors and a big distraction, to derail the Herd from championship hopes. And I'll tell you what, if somebody's able to pull off that type of distraction for this long and this deep rooting, damn, they're good. So there's just too much smoke. There's got to be some fire. So we need to talk about it.
Let's answer something logically real quick.
Yeah, let's do
that. If this was another team trying to distract us from winning, why wouldn't we just come out and say every single thing about that's false and here is the contract extension? Right. So, some of the conspiracy theories are kind of wild to me, but everything is pointing toward Coach Huff after this game will become the Southern Miss head coach. Yeah. Now, could anything in the world happen? Man, in the world of college football and coaching carousels and dominoes falling, things could happen. But as of right now, that's kind of where, you could probably place your wagers.
there will probably be more jobs that open up this week. There will be guys that get hired away that weren't expecting to leave their current job, which will then vacate another job. And you can't, like, I'm not trying to say it ain't happening, right? I'm with you. Anything could happen. But I think the only thing that ain't going to happen is that he'll be back in Huntington. I think that's pretty much what it's looking like.
It's almost 100% that you could say that. I don't think that there's. I think maybe there's a couple people still that are like, the rumor about the Board of Governors meeting. It was like, well, is that to extend Coach Huff? And it was like, I think
you would have indicated that it was.
Yeah. I don't know why you wouldn't even just come out and say that, in the meeting, and put it out there. It's like, hey, we had, this not going to happen till after the game, but we had, discussions about that. They're not even saying that. So, I mean, every single sign that anybody needs to see is pointing toward Saturday will be Coach Huff's last game at Marshall.
Yeah. And we don't know the location. We expect it to be Southern Miss. But again, who's to say that somebody doesn't covet him at the last moment and go, you know what? That's who we want in Orlando, or that's who we want in, Wake Forest, because the Wake Forest coach decides to retire. Who knows? Who knows, man? It's anything.
Well, you said it earlier. There's openings right now, and there are people trying to take current coaches for those openings. So when those people leave, that's a brand new opening. The dominoes are going to continue to fall for months and months. So I don't think it's a 100% foregone conclusion that he would end up at Southern Miss, but I do think it's in the high 90s. I think that it is, it's going to take something unexpected for that to happen differently, is the way I look at it.
Yeah. So I say that knowing this, right? This is not a grand scheme to derail the herd from winning a championship. If that were the case, it would be Louisiana planting all this information, right? But there's just too much smoke for there not to be fire, like I said. And if it was all smoke, I think our administration would come out and say this is false. And they'd put out the cool graphics of like, he's our guy through 2029 and all this kind of stuff, and we're not seeing any of that. So the silence should tell you really all you need to know. And unless these guys are the greatest poker players ever, and it's just like, fooled you, he's here for the next 5 years, which I'd be fine with too. If Saturday is the last game of the Charles Huff era, I will say it's been an up and down road. It's been tumultuous, and I don't think some fans were ever willing to fully accept him. Some fans weren't willing to fully accept him after, or couldn't let him off the hook after the debacle with Fancher and the portal last year, and that got kind of ugly. And whatever your reasoning is, it's your reasoning. I don't really care. You can be the fan you want to be, right? He won us some games here. He won us a lot of games here. He protected the Joan quite a bit, especially late in seasons. For us, we went undefeated in November again. That's 2 times in the last 3 years we had undefeated Novembers. And that's when you want to be winning games, man. Those count. Those are conference games. And then we went undefeated at home this year. It's restoring some of that luster to, you don't just walk into Joan C. Edwards Stadium and win, So he was always very gracious with his time doing the show with us. I mean, 2 or 3 times he was on our show, and he was always candid with us, and I enjoyed my time talking to him. I didn't feel like he gave me coach speak on our shows. And in fact, there were some times where he was like, "Nah, man, y'all need to ask me some real stuff. Like, ask me what the fans want to know. Ask me what you want to know,
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And I hope if he's no longer the coach next year or after this game on Saturday, that whoever our next coach is extends us the same grace. Because, we like bringing these guys to the fan base in a different way. We don't want to be – we're not trying to be Keith Morehouse, right? Keith is great. I'll never be Keith Morehouse. right? I can only be me and you can only be you. And we talk to these guys in a different way, right? So I hope that whoever it is, and if it's Huff, I hope he wants to come back on our show one more time and shoot the shit about, how this all played out. But if it's somebody else, I hope they will come on our show and let us acquaint them with the Herd fans in only the way that we do it, right? But I know we'll have more to talk about this after the game. But for now, I want to get ahead of it. That's all.
Yeah. And, there's everybody in the world out there, has their insider source. I can tell you, I have not spoken to a single person at Marshall or anything to do with the situation. We don't try to break news, and I have not reached out to a single person about it whatsoever. But everybody is saying, and even nationally, not just at our school, that we already have the next coach signed and ready to go. So I would say that is, if I'm throwing odds out there, over 80%, and probably a lot higher than that, but I'm comfortable saying 80%, that's probably already true and set in stone. But again, the only reason that I'm not saying 100 or 99 or whatever is the unknown, the coaching carousel, the dominoes that can fall.
That's right. That's right.
Anything could happen. So we're not going to throw something out there and say this is a fact unless we know it's a fact. And the honest to God's truth is I've not talked to a single person, nor will I. And I'll find out when everyone else finds out when it's announced.
No, here's what I'll say to that end. The last time we put something out that we felt like we had spoken to someone that we trust. Right. And even and at that time, that information might have been accurate and inaccurate minutes later. But at the time we were told, we were told it was accurate. So we went with it, right? Because we trust that source. And sometimes we get the break news, but it's purely by accident.
And the other thing about that too is, you're the one that crafted the tweet. Everyone that's listening here, knows that you run that account 99% of the time, if not more. You crafted that tweet, but I think that everybody needs to understand you can speak for yourself on this. You didn't come out and say, I 100% know this is to be fact. You said a very, very reliable source has told us this. And that person should know, and that's all you said. You didn't say, well, I know this firsthand. You didn't.
No, I'm not
you
in
put
the room.
It out there. Yeah. You put out there exactly what happened. A very reliable source told us that. If it turns out to be false, you didn't say, hey, I know for a fact, you just said, guys, here's what's happened. We've seen Luke Creasy do that this week, as saying, here is exactly what Coach Huff said about the things, because he was there at the thing. He's just putting it out there. He's not saying, hey, guys, I'm here to tell you that Coach never met with USM, and that's not going to be who he goes with or anything like that. He just said, here's what happened, and that's exactly what you did with that tweet, is we heard from a very reliable source, person to person, that told us that meeting did not happen. That interview did not happen at that time. At that time.
Yeah. So here's the thing. If coaches come and go, players come and go. We're Marshall University. We've been through the biggest tragedy that one can face, and we've always persevered. So to be ready to jump off of a cliff because we're going to have a coaching change or because some players hit the portal, man, I love these guys too. I appreciate all the blood, sweat, and tears that they gave the program because I'm a damn Herd fan. But it don't change a thing. This program's bigger than any one person, any one player, any one coach. No matter who's patrolling the sidelines, no matter who's strapping the helmets, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Marshall football will endure, and we will continue to play football games on Saturday in a highly competitive fashion.
Yeah, this is the 5th coach, I think, and getting ready to be the 6th coach since I started watching as a fan. I don't remember watching pre-Jim Donnan.
Mhm.
I'm sure that I watched, but I was younger and didn't pay attention to who the coach was or whatever. But I really, really, really started watching in like 91, or 90, whichever. But really, really started paying attention. And we've gone through that many coaches. Coaches are going to go, and we're going to still be here as fans, still watching and cheering.
Mm-hmm.
We might hate like hell to see a coach go, but we're going to support the hell out of the next one that comes in as well.
Of course. And as should Herd fans, right? Because
that's what I meant was Herd fans, not me and you. No, I mean, that's what we do as fans is, because that's the new captain of your team. That's who's going to take you there. That you got to get behind them.
So this is the other thing, and we're going to have to shut this one down.
Yeah.
And that's the name of the game with coaching, right? A coach leaves, he takes a lot of players with him. Well, you hope that the coach that you hire brings in a lot of instant impact players with him as well, but he really needs to be able to navigate that portal and recruit the hell out of it, because that makes you instantaneously competitive despite your losses from a year ago. And if we're staring down the barrel of a championship team and some big wholesale changes, maybe there are going to be changes regardless. The people will hit the portal all the time. So you need somebody that can come in, has great relationships with coaches, that can come in and put quality men on the sideline, that can develop players, that are creative play callers, that are just football guys, man. And you got to be able to dominate the portal. Herd fans, if you're upset and if you feel personally like your feelings are hurt, why would he go to Southern Miss, or why would he go somewhere else? Maybe it's time. And if you're not a member of the Big Green, you might consider joining the Big Green, because money makes all this stuff go. And the more we have, the better we can do, the more competitive we can be. It's the harsh reality of sports, man. You can't have something for nothing. And it's really freaking cheap to join the Big Green, dude. We haven't said it in a long time, but it still hasn't changed. $5 a freaking month. $60 a year. I mean, like, if you got a Herd fan that you got to buy a Christmas present for and you can't figure out what to get them, $60 and you get them a year's membership to the Big Green. And that not only gets them some perks, but it helps the Herd. Like, 'tis the season, man. If you can swing $20 a month to join the Thunder Trust, you should do that. If you can swing $5 a month to join the Big Green or more, you should do that. It's just, we all need to shoulder a little bit more of the load instead of kind of sitting back and going, Brad Smith needs to do this, or, X donor needs to do this. Hey, man, we all got to do our part. Your part doesn't have to be $1,000 a month. Your part can be $5 a month.
Yeah.
It ain't no judgment here, just whatever you can swing it. And then we might be able to pay coaches a little bit more. We might be able to retain or bring in more Mike Greens or more JJ Roberts, the guys that are real difference makers. I'm telling you, it's a different world we live in, man. The 90s formula doesn't work anymore. It doesn't. You're still going to have great coaches and great players, but they have a lot more freedom to go now. Come and go. So you either adapt or you fall by the wayside. And that's not me preaching. It's just the harsh truth of the situation. We all need to shoulder a little bit more of the responsibility instead of saying they need to this, they need to that. It's like, man, I can give $5 a month, so I will. It's that simple. You got anything else before we get out of here?
No. So whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Jack, or whether you see us welcoming in whatever comes here in the next few days, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. Sunbelt East Division champs. What do you know about that? We'll see you next week. Well, in a couple days for a Sunbelt Conference Championship game preview. Later.